Helping people liberate their own inner peace, joy, and magnificent beauty has become my personal agenda. How
Yeah.
is your work with whole brain living and the four characters played into that agenda?
Well, when I gave that TED talk, I had already defined myself as completely recovered. And that went out into the world, and whole world got introduced to Jill Bolte Taylor at that level. And so Ted and I was the first TED talk that ever went viral on the internet. So Ted and I kind of got famous together, and that was exciting and interesting. But for me, it was a miss because I wanted people to walk away from that TED talk in awe of themselves and what they are as a biological creature. And instead, what happened was people were in awe of me, and and I that it was a miss. That wasn't my goal. My goal was to help people realize they have the power to choose moment by moment who and how they want to be, and that they have these awesome parts of who they are, and they can get to know these different parts of who they are, and then have the power to choose. So it took me until 2021 to publish book number two. I never thought I'd publish book number two. I never thought I'd have anything more to say, but what it does, whole brain living, the anatomy of choice, and the four characters that drive our life is all about helping people differentiate four different parts of who they are. Two different emotional parts, one in each hemisphere, and two thinking groups of cells, one in each hemisphere. And when you get to know each of those four groups of cells, then you can choose in any moment because you know what your choices are. And you can't choose if you don't know what your options are, which is why people may meditate for 20 years and never feel that experience of blissful euphoria because they don't know where they're going. And what whole brain living does was it gives them a framework of getting to know this part of who you are. And then once you do that, then you can choose to embody that part by choice.
How can we go about becoming more consciously aware of all four of our characters?
Well, I encourage them to read Whole Brain Living. Whole Brain Living is a one of a kind. This is a framework that marries the neuroanatomy, underlying neuroanatomical cells, with what those cells do. And thinking cells think, emotional cells emote or experience or experiential, but there are big differences between what the right brain does and what the left brain does. So, for example, then the right emotion, which is right here, right now, is more experiential. What does it feel like to be in this body? What does it feel like to dive into water and feel the pressure of the water and the temperature of the water and literally wetness of the water? What does that experience? Where the left hemisphere emotional tissue actually steps out of the consciousness of the present moment, and it takes the information from the present moment and compares it to our past experience to determine, am I in danger or threat in the present moment. So we have these two very different instruments inside of our brain and how they process information so that we can be a whole human. And the better we get to know those four characters, then we can bring them into conversation with one another. And it's a democracy. It's like, well, who do we want to be right here, right now? And have a negotiation with the other parts so that we never experience personal conflict because we're in communication with ourselves.
Building off us as individuals, building that relationship with our four characters, you also say that the ultimate goal is for your four characters to become so familiar with one another that they create healthy relationships among themselves.
Exactly.
How do we make sure we're going about that as well, where those relationships between the characters are also being built?
Well, I think that, if we sit and we recognize that there's four different personalities inside of me that are very predictable based on the skill sets, and you have the exact same four characters based on the anatomy of your brain, and we all have four characters, then I have my own four that I need to work with and let them get to know one another. But in any interpersonal relationship, that means there's eight of us. And so we might find that some parts of our brain get along really well, but there are certain parts of ourselves that we just don't know how to navigate in a healthy way, because when you're in your unhappy triggered self, it's my automaticity. I automatically become emotionally triggered as well. And we will never find a resolution until someone steps out of that triggered emotional part of who we are in order to hold the space in a different way. So what whole brain living does is it gives us a roadmap to our own peace of mind. And when we have that inside of ourselves, and we understand the four characters in the other person, then I can strategize your four characters very differently, because I have gained the power then to have choice in who and how I want to be in relationship with you.
To set the stage, can you also just briefly describe what each character represents?
Yeah. Yeah. Character one is the left thinking tissue in our brain, left thinking. And that's our rational brain. It defines the boundaries of where I begin and end. It is my individuation, my identity as an individual. I have a past, I have a future. It defines what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad. It likes to control people, places, and things. It's our alpha type personality, and it likes to be the boss in most of us. So that's left thinking. Left emotion, again, has a past and a future. So these cells step out of the present moment, compare the present moment to our past experience, and our past experience is where all of our emotional trauma from our childhood is. So this is where our trauma from the past is. So it may be angry. It's also our fight or flight autonomic nervous system with the amygdala and the hippocampus. It's all of our addiction tissue right there in the left insular cortex. Wipe that out, and people don't have addiction anymore. It's really very interesting. So character two is kind of our it's a little person inside of ourselves, one of the children that never matures inside of ourselves, and it's kind of always looking for a reason to push away and say, no, I don't want more of that in my life. It's designed to protect us. It also is necessary for us to grow, because it learns from past experience. So we have to have this little character two part of who we are in order to learn and grow. I call character three is the emotional tissue in the right hemisphere. And the right hemisphere, it's right here, right now. So in that emotional, it's more experiential, as I described, like diving into water. So it's that playful, it's creative, it's open, it's expansive, it's entrepreneurial, it's adventurous, because it doesn't define what's right, wrong, good, and bad. It just is what it is, and it's going to color anything any color it wants because it can. And it wants to try, whatever it is. And then the right thinking tissue is the tissue that is right here, right now. And it's the big picture perspective of our life. But the biggest piece of that big picture perspective is I'm a living being. I'm alive. And I'm made up from a single cell. And that single cell multiplied and divided itself inside the womb at a rate of 250,000 cells per second. Per second. And it's this big energy ball of consciousness around these cells that make up this magnificent organism that we all are. So it's the part of us that is more our, what a lot of people think of it as our divine self, or our higher self, or our self that is connected to something that is greater than we are. It's like the portal through which our consciousness moves when we pray, or when we have awe and celebration and gratitude in the present moment.